and vegetables. This is what the future looks like. We need to use more of other natural materials, and I think through this diversity, we can really solve this problem. And I'm really hopeful that we will.
I'm Anna Stewart in the City of London, and this is CNN.
It is actually very complicated to move money around the world. Few companies can do it at scale. Few companies can do it in the number of countries that we do it. And so these companies that come together like MoneyGrams and like our competitors do really provide a very unique service, and that is to instantly move money, get funds from the United States to Mexico, literally in sub-seconds. For the ability to take $350 that you worked hard to earn and get it back to your mother so that she can pick it up in Mexico, use it for food, healthcare, housing, is actually a very unique service. If you're from many of the countries, Mexico, Philippines, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, some of the largest receive markets in the world, it's absolutely critical to the lives of the consumers in those countries. But many people don't appreciate that. If it's not the life that you live, then it's not something that you really ever really get involved in.
I'm Jim Bitterman in Paris, and this is CNN.
I'm Pamela Brown in Washington. You are live in the CNN newsroom. Aftershocks across America as abortion rights advocates and opponents react to the sudden end of a 50-year-old federal constitutional right. We're in a third day of clashes in the streets of cities large and small. In Lynchburg, Virginia, a crisis pregnancy center was hit by vandals who spray painted, "If abortion ain't safe, you ain't safe." According to the center's website, it does not provide abortions or make referrals for them. This incident coming as the Department of Homeland Security warns extremist violence is likely to continue across the country. CNN reporters are tracking all of the latest developments tonight. Let's begin with CNN's Sunlen Serfaty, who has been at the Supreme Court today talking with people who have come out to protest or to applaud the decision. Back to you, Sunlen.
Pam, it certainly has been an emotional and at times very tense day out here outside of the Supreme Court. You see there are protesters still here protesting at the base of the steps of the Supreme Court, and there was a very large and at times very vocal crowd here. People on both sides of this issue, people who were for and against Friday's historic ruling, and we heard the passion from both sides of this issue earlier today.
Personal opinion is I'm happy with it, but one of the reasons is it now gives each individual state the right to decide for itself what it wants its law to be regarding abortion, which is true about numerous other things, and no one complains about it.
If you aren't outraged by the Supreme Court decision that was made this week, then you're not paying attention to what's happening in this country, and you need to open your eyes and educate yourself. Maternal mortality rates are shameful. It's atrocious, and and it's disproportionately people of color and people that don't have access to resources. And to take that away from them, to take away their agency, to take away their ability to make these decisions for themselves and to access the health care that they need, it's shameful, and it's not what this country is about.
And the people who were speaking out against Friday's Supreme Court ruling, they decided to take this demonstration on the move. A short time ago, they left the Supreme Court and they marched about a mile down Independence Avenue towards the White House, which is where they're protesting now. The people said they want President Biden to know and hear that they are angry. Pam?
I'm Camila Bernal in Los Angeles, where protesters are on their third day of marches on the streets of downtown Los Angeles. Today's march began with speakers who shared their personal stories and organizers who told this crowd to introduce themselves to one another because they believe these are the people that will be fighting side by side over the next couple of months with them. They want to prepare because they say that California will see an influx of women from other states coming to get an abortion, and they believe that with money and volunteer work, they will be able to help other women coming from other states searching for an abortion here in the state of California. They say that over the next couple of months, they have a lot of work to do, but they believe that their work begins right here on the streets.
Sunlen, Camila, thank you for your reporting. And joining me now, Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin. Welcome to you, Senator. We all heard about this draft opinion when it was leaked a month ago, but the reaction to the reality is very intense. No matter how you feel about this, you probably feel a strong reaction. I think, frankly, a lot of people have even been surprised, even though it did leak a month early. What do you think?
Well, I certainly know that that sentiment was shared among my colleagues, among my constituents, so many that I've talked to, that even though we knew this was coming, nevertheless, to wake up one morning and realize that we've gone back 50 years, and in a state like Wisconsin, where the criminal abortion law on the books was written in 1849, we've gone back well over a century and a half. And it is shocking when you think about all of its ramifications, but that a fundamental constitutional right, women's freedom to control their own bodies, to make decisions about whether or when to have a family, to access health care, is now, has been stripped away. And in many ways, women are going to be second-class citizens with regard to their ability to participate in the economy and, again, have bodily autonomy.
What do you say to your Republican counterparts who feel just as strongly as you do, but on the other side of this debate, that, look, there is nothing in the Constitution guaranteeing abortion, that the Supreme Court essentially came up with this through due process nearly 50 years ago, and that this is about protecting the weakest in the womb, and it's up to the states to decide? What do you say to them? Because as you hear, the argument is just as intense on that side as well.
Listen, first of all, this has been standing, well-accepted precedent for almost 50 years. And many of the justices that now sit on the Supreme Court, including the 3 appointed by President Trump during his term, talked about the standing of long-standing precedent, said things were settled. And so, first of all, there's the deception that so many feel there. But beyond that, when you leave it to the states, you are saying literally that depending on what state you were born and raised in, what state you reside in, you have a different set of rights. And I can certainly tell you again that women in Wisconsin, that has the oldest criminal abortion law on the books, enacted in 1849, we've been sent back to a previous century, 2 previous centuries, and it's going to be very different from state to state. And that's not how we view, fundamental freedoms.
Right. I want to ask you, you brought this up, that the conservative justices, there has been a lot of scrutiny on what they said during their confirmation hearings with respect to Roe v. Wade. They didn't outright say they would overturn Roe v. Wade. They said that it's important precedent and so forth and so on. Do you feel, as you look back on their comments, that they were being misleading or deceitful? I mean, you know, I know some Democrats feel that way. Joe Manchin, for one, who voted for him, for Kavanaugh.
So I would say that it has been customary practice for many decades now for candidates, nominees for the Supreme Court or other judicial seats to skirt around any direct question about how would you rule on, you know, a given set of facts or hypotheticals. But these justices in public meetings indicated that they had great respect for longstanding precedent. And we've been reading a lot about what they said in private meetings where there were note takers and staff present. So, but, you know, again, I think this whole decision leaves a shaken America. You know, it's not just about the members of the Senate who sat down and feel like they were given certain indications or promises or, you know, were implied certain things. But I feel like there's a whole swath of America who's looking at this court saying they are partisan. They are, you know, again, not standing by great respect for precedent.
Yeah, certainly confidence in the court is at an all-time low from the public. Given Clarence Thomas's remarks that gay marriage and the right to contraception should be reconsidered, as well as gay relations, do you anticipate having to fight those battles too?
You know, he put it very clearly where, you know, this was something that people were speculating about after the draft opinion was leaked several weeks ago. But he said it very clearly that that cases that use the same reasoning that this one does should be reviewed again. And I would go, you know, even further to, you know, this would also impact Loving versus Virginia. And as you said, contraception cases, marriage equality cases. This is far-reaching in terms of its implications. And I do believe that there's going to be great worry about those cherished rights and freedoms being stripped away. But also, as you saw, people are speaking out and preparing to vote. And it's what I've been urging everyone to think first and foremost about is use your voices and your votes. We need voters to go to the midterms and elections beyond and look at who's standing on the side of women's freedom and women's rights and who's standing firmly against them, and cast your votes accordingly, particularly for pro-choice Democrats.
But quickly, what do you say to the disaffected voter who is like, look, we did our job. We went to the polls in 2020. We elected a Democratic president. This is what we're having to deal with now. Why would they go to the polls in the midterms then?
So first of all, democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy requires people's involvement, and it's not just, you know, every 4 years. Frankly, it needs to be focused on local races, statewide races, as well as national races. You know, the people who have been plotting since Roe versus Wade was first decided of how are we going to go about overturning it, and there are folks who have been working on this for decades. They stuck with it. In many cases, they're one-issue voters, and you know, they very much plotted this out. We have to use our voices and our votes and recognize that in order to safeguard democracy, in order to safeguard the advancements of constitutional rights and not the retreat or going backwards, that it requires constant attention. And so it's not casual voting. This is voting like our lives depend upon it, because they do.
All right, Senator Tammy Baldwin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you were in the CNN newsroom. The January 6th committee is far from done with public hearings. I spoke to two members of the committee this evening. Hear what they told me about their plans up next. And then later, a fight breaks out at an anti-abortion rally where a Republican state Senate candidate punched his political opponent. Plus, Justice Clarence Thomas wrote that he wants the Supreme Court to revisit making same-sex marriage a constitutional right. We just talked about that. Well, in 2015, I spoke live with the man at the center of the original decision.
Jim, when you hear the president say to you that your leadership has changed the country, what is that like?
I can't even put it into words.
That was 7 years ago today. Jim Obergefell joins me live this hour to talk about the current situation. You're in the CNN newsroom.
We're here at the home of one of the FSB team. Was it your team that poisoned Navalny?
What do you want the world to know?
People are so exhausted. Just going to help her carry this bag.
Scores of Taliban fighters, and just behind us, the U.S. Embassy.
I'm the one who has to look them in the eye. Can I have your word? These people are depending on you.
Now they're pressing in. They want desperately to tell their stories.
I'm James Roby. I'm the Global Head of Environmental Sustainability at Capgemini. People often ask, why should businesses care about sustainability? Well, first of all, quite frankly, an unsustainable pathway is not going to be good for any business. Businesses are reliant on having consumers that will buy from them. They're reliant on having employees who want to work for them. Increasingly, all the stakeholders of the business are asking difficult questions. So businesses which aren't taking sustainability seriously essentially are going to be out of business. But in reality, it's never too late to start. A great way to start is by trying to understand your own impacts as an organisation. Perhaps calculate your carbon footprint. Ultimately, we need everybody on this journey. So why not start today?
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran.
We are in Jerusalem. Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, today on CNN.
Layer by layer, witness by witness, the January 6th committee has used its first 5 public hearings to drive home a truly unsettling reality check that this nation was perilously close to a coup, essentially. This past week, state elections officials testified how then President Trump and his allies pressured them to decertify Joe Biden's legitimate election win. And on Thursday, top officials from the Trump Justice Department described how they defied Trump's increasingly maniac pressure to act on his baseless claims of voter fraud. This evening, I spoke to 2 Democrats who sit on that committee, and here's some of our conversation. Where do things stand with Ginni Thomas, wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas? Have you heard back from her? Is she willing to come to testify behind closed doors about her connection to these efforts to overturn the election?
Well, as you know, we sent her a letter asking her to come in. It was sent privately. She made a decision to share it publicly, which she had every right to do. And she did say to the media that she was looking forward to coming in and talking to the committee, and we take her at her word that she will be coming in to talk to us.
Well, have you heard back from her though, or are you just referring to what you heard publicly from her?
I don't know where that is. Obviously, that is negotiated, the time and place between her lawyers and our staff, and I don't know the precise status of that. But since she said publicly she was eager to come in, I expect that that's the truth. Why would she lie and say that if she didn't mean it?
Your committee has weaved in new information with what the public already knew, painting this big picture. New headlines have emerged from every hearing. How much new information or testimony will we see in the upcoming hearings? Can you give us any insight on what to expect?
Well, there will be new things. We've got new information coming in, by the way, and so we need to evaluate, really a very large amount of new information and see how much of it is relevant and how much isn't.
We've been pursuing a chronological breakdown of the events that took place leading up to January 6th, and now we're getting closer to January 6th. I've been working most intently on the mobilization of the mob and the domestic violent extremist groups like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and the Groypers and the 3%ers and so on. And so we want to explain both what happened with the mobilization of a violent fascistic street movement, and then how that insurrectionary mob violence converged with the attempts to coerce Mike Pence and Congress to step out of the way so that there could be essentially a seizure of the presidency by Donald Trump.
Just quickly, do you think that Donald Trump, by way of the actions you've laid out, that he was treasonous?
Well, that's not a word that I have used, but, I'm continuing to watch very carefully all of the evidence that's coming out in each of the hearings. Treason is the only crime we have that's actually defined in the Constitution, so it's a very strict proof.
And the committee's final 2 hearings had been scheduled for this week. They have been moved to later in July. And you were in the CNN newsroom. In America's 246-year history, there has never been a black woman elected as a governor. CNN looked into what's behind the struggle and what it will take to change that. Eva McKinn and Shondelise Duster are here with their new reporting up next.
Advancement, adaptation, new Marketplace Middle East.
Find out why water is the new blue gold.
Marketplace Middle East, Saturday on CNN.
Never before in the world have the traffickers had such disruption. There was a window where their model was frustrated. So I think we are on a massive moment of opportunity that we can't miss. Stop the Traffic is a global organisation that fights to prevent human trafficking, founded in 2005. It was probably 10 years ago where CNN came and filmed Stop the Traffic when we launched the chocolate campaign. An enormous number of people were turning around going, what are you doing? You know, why are you talking about trafficking around chocolate? And at that point, people weren't connecting the supply chains of businesses with the trafficking and exploitation of young boys in West Africa. Now, there is a Modern Slavery Act that has a supply chain statement and agenda that came into being in 2015 in the UK, and businesses are leading. So do I believe change can happen and people can rethink? Absolutely. And I don't believe yet we've seen the picture of how the trafficking networks of this world work. I think we need to be looking at the money flows. We need to be looking at the movement flows. We need to bring real changes that would disrupt the traffickers, frustrate their model, and maybe make them have to pivot again.
This is CNN.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels. Connected to your world.
I'm Isa Suarez in London, and this is CNN. Well, tensions at some of the country's abortion protests have reached a boiling point. In Providence, Rhode Island, a fight broke out at an abortion rights rally there. State Senate candidate Jennifer Rourke was punched in the face several times, she says, by a man who is running for office against her. Rourke says she was trying to de-escalate the anger in the crowd when it happened. Her opponent who punched her is also a police officer. He turned himself in, and he has been charged with assault and says he is no longer running for office. Well, striking down Roe v. Wade was a major win for conservatives, most notably for evangelical voters. And this morning, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham pointed to one man for making that happen.
President Trump deserves a lion's share of credit here. He fought like a tiger to put 3 constitutional conservative judges on the court. He stood behind Kavanaugh, and all of us who've been working for the last 50 years to get this right, to have a constitutional reset.
Joining me now is CNN national politics reporter Eva McKen and CNN politics reporter Shondelise Duster. Hi, ladies. Great to see you. So, Shondelise, welcome to the show, by the way. I want to start with what polls are showing. They're showing a majority of Americans support the right to an abortion. Could this end up being a losing issue for Republicans in the midterms?
Well, Pam, it's too early to tell. We're still a little far out from November, but we do know that there was concern when the draft opinion was leaked. There was concern among some GOP members that that would gin up the Democratic base. But also to that, there's also just the issue that even though there are Republicans who are for the Supreme Court's decision, not every one of them can be for the decision because it extends not just to abortion. It also affects reproductive health of women in terms of fertility treatments, and that is not a party issue. That is a everyone issue. And there are other issues on Americans' minds, including how to feed their families, high gas prices, and inflation. And so those are some of the most prominent issues that may not have abortion on the forefront come November.
And even the Democratic nominee for governor in Georgia, Stacey Abrams, she is calling for a legislative solution to restore nationwide abortion access. Let's take a listen.
I think President Biden should do what is within the purview of the executive. I believe that we need a legislative solution that restores the constitutional protection to women regardless of the state they live in. State lines should not determine the quality of your citizenship in the United States.
So how is this abortion ruling changing the conversation for Democrats ahead of the midterms?
Well, Pam, this certainly gives Democrats an issue to rally around at a time when they sorely need it. But take Stacey Abrams. I think that's a really interesting case running for governor in Georgia, not California, not New York, Georgia, which many would argue is more of a purple state. But she feels really comfortable leaning into this. We saw her briefly suspend her fundraising effort to redirect funds for reproductive justice organizations in Georgia. And so what we've seen is that Democrats just feel really comfortable with this. They believe that they don't have to waffle, that they can lean into their value and take this issue to the voters.
And Shondelise, some of the black women running for governor said they don't feel supported by the Democratic Party. Why is that? What has been the Democratic Party response to that?
Well, traditionally, black women haven't really been seen as viable for executive leadership in offices like this. The experts that we spoke with have mentioned that. So these black women who don't feel that they are being supported not only is because they're a black woman, but also because of where they are in terms of fundraising. They feel that they have a lack of resources. I spoke with Deidre DeGier, who's running in Iowa, and she was talking about her struggles within her fundraising and saying that they've done a lot with a little, but if they could do so much more if they had more money, and that's something that black women have been seen as doing a lot. And so in terms of the response from the Democratic Party, state party officials told us that they don't typically endorse during the primaries. And the DGA also said that as well, but they also recognize the criticism behind the support for a large white apparatus in the party and that there needs to be some improvements made. But they do feel that they have been behind the candidates in being able to give them the resources and some type of support.
What has your reporting indicated, Eva?
Well, I think a really interesting case is Danielle Allen in Massachusetts. After, I think, about 15 months, she dropped out, didn't even make it to the Democratic primary. And she actually said the issue was not the DGA. They do not get involved in primaries, but she still felt like she had resources from them in terms of advice. She didn't feel like it was fundraising or enthusiasm. But it was actually the barrier to entry of even getting on the ballot. She doesn't come from a traditional background of having a background in terms of running in or participating in the state legislature previously, as many candidates do. She is actually a professor at Harvard. So when we think about elevating black women, when Republicans and Democrats look to do that, sometimes they come from not traditional political backgrounds, but their experiences should not be any less valued. I think that is the frustration that we routinely heard.
Yeah, it's such important reporting from both of you, Shondelise and Eva. Thank you both. Well, in Ukraine's capital, Russian missiles hit an apartment and a kindergarten. The attack coming just as President Biden and G7 allies met in Germany. He'll have a report from Kyiv up next.
in association with Kirloskar, limitless.
Every week, we consume over 5 grams of plastic. I've just found a mere way to try and remove these from the environment and try and remove them from the environment such that we have less of them entering our food system and entering the environment in the first place. My name is Fionn Verreda. I am 21 years old and I am a student of chemistry at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. Now, more than ever, young people are in a place of power. We're seeing more and more young scientists getting taken seriously, their grassroots idea being scaled. And we're also seeing just more and more young people who are passionate about this problem. We, however, have to remember that while only 25% of the global population is youth, they are 100% of the global future.
These troops, they are Russian. I've spoken to the commander. He said they are now in control. Over on that way. It's a secret location. They're going to fire on Russian forces. There has been a ferocious battle here. There's unexploded grenades everywhere. We're being shown the powerful American guns, giving them an edge.
You downplayed the US intelligence assessment. Do you now regret that?
I'm in Kiev right now, and it is under attack, Mr. Lavrov, from Russian forces. I'm being told by our security that we need to get our flak jackets on. No matter where you are in this country, lives are being shattered. There are thousands streaming out. It is at least a chance to save their own lives. Matthew Chance, CNN.
Business never sleeps. As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chatterley, journalist, global market analyst, and host of CNN's First Move. Join me in the financial capital of the world for market-moving perspective on the news influencing global politics, culture, and finance. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers. Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley. Today on CNN.
Out front tonight, a potential breakthrough in treating coronavirus.
We've gotten very little help from the federal government.
Could all this spending lead to a bigger economic crisis? One of our viewers saw you last night on the show. She says she's going to pay your rent this month. Shut up. I want to go now to an incredible story of survival. Would you do it all again in terms of being a nurse, knowing that that could put you at risk for this?
I want to help people more than I ever have.
Aaron Burnett out front on CNN.
At the same time, President Biden and G7 leaders were meeting in Germany. Today, Russian missiles again pounded the capital of Ukraine. A residential apartment complex was destroyed, sending rescue teams scrambling. And one of the survivors pulled from the rubble is a 7-year-old girl whose father was killed. CNN Sama Abdelaziz is in Kyiv.
An attack that rattled Ukraine's capital. In the early hours of Sunday morning, multiple Russian missiles hit a residential area. A 9-story apartment block was struck, leaving families trapped under the rubble. Dozens of rescue workers scrambled to pull survivors out of the ruins, using cranes to reach the still smoldering top floor. Natalia Nikitina watched in horror as first responders tried to rescue her daughter-in-law. Losing loved ones is the worst fate, she said. We do not deserve this. This video from emergency services shows the harrowing rescue. After a nearly 5-hour ordeal, Katerina was pulled out injured, but alive.
This horrific attack is going to shake up Kyiv. For weeks now, the capital has been relatively secure, relatively quiet. This is absolutely going to shatter that semblance of safety.
Several other residents were wounded, including Katerina's 7-year-old daughter, who was cut by fragments as she slept. At least one person was killed, police said. The backyard of a nearby kindergarten was also struck, leaving shrapnel where children play. On the scene, the mayor of Kyiv expressed outrage.
This senseless war, and we have to do everything to stop this war because thousands and thousands unguilty people, civilians, died.
There are a number of military facilities in the area, officials say, but the victims here clearly innocent. The airstrikes happening as G7 leaders gathered for a major summit in Germany, a possible message from President Putin. Salma Abdulaziz, CNN, Kyiv.
You were in the CNN newsroom on this Sunday. With the fall of Roe v. Wade, there are real fears of what landmark cases conservative Supreme Court justices may target next. Jim Obergefell, the lead plaintiff in the 2015 case that legalized same-sex marriage, joins me next with his concerns.
I'm Bill Weir in Greenland, and this is CNN.
Flytrex works with drones, which are basically robots. You don't have to pay salaries to robots. And that way we can take the cost, make it an order of magnitude more affordable than using humans for deliveries, especially in the suburbs where the population density is too low to optimize for multiple deliveries in the same run. We can basically offer a free delivery to our customers and charge a very small amount from the different restaurant chains and retailers. So it's basically a win-win situation for everybody, getting you your meal hotter, faster, and in a more affordable way. And we're already servicing almost 10,000 families in North Carolina, making deliveries 7 days a week, every day, to people's backyards during lunch, dinner. We send Tylenol in the afternoons, diapers in the evening, just servicing whatever people need in their homes.
Today, we live in an unpredictable environment, and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
The missile struck right here. What is your interpretation of Putin's intention?
My show brings you the latest news and top news makers.
What does President Putin think he has achieved in Ukraine to date?
We just want to say stop to Vladimir Putin.
And we also dive below the headlines to explore vital issues impacting our lives.
What are you looking at for the future with these additional formations that you've talked about, and where? What are the UN and other countries doing for you? Is it enough?
It's crucial we make sense of what's happening.
We are doing this for our very survival.
What do you think a peace or a ceasefire or an end to this looks like?
And fully understand what's at stake.
We have will, we have guts, and we are fighting like hell.
Amanpour, tonight on CNN.
In a leafy corner of Bawal National Park, a high-stakes courtship is taking place. The future of this critically endangered species in Bangladesh depends on it. The Asian giant tortoise was thought to be extinct in the country until 10 years ago, when a few were discovered in the wild. And now, conservation biologist Shalvar Cesar Rahman is on a mission to bring them back.
We realize if we want to prevent extinction of the species from Bangladesh, we must take drastic efforts.
Raman runs a conservation and breeding center for 4 critically endangered species of turtle and tortoise.
The captive bred critical endangered Asian giant tortoises, which are bred here in our center for the first time in Bangladesh. We'll be releasing these individuals back in the wild.
Working with the indigenous Merle community, he and his team train former hunters as parabiologists, or citizen scientists that collect data and monitor species to help protect local wildlife.
We're empowering them to be the guardian of the ecosystem. I do believe there are reasons to be optimistic, and it all depends on us and the future generation to make that decision and to take action.
So many questions about what is the federal government doing. Do you get the anger that is out here?
How concerned are you about the front line?
You don't believe that there's a racial divide here?
Looking back, as president, did you tell the story of race in America enough, do you think?
All the places I've been and all the things I've seen, all the people I've talked to, I carry with me. They're part of what I do right here, holding the powerful accountable, keeping them honest.
AC 360, Tuesday through Saturday only on CNN.
The journey to the top for a successful business in Africa starts with an idea. But how does a concept become a moneymaker? African and global industry leaders share their stories on Profit Point in CNN Marketplace Africa.
7 years ago today, the Supreme Court ruled that same-sex couples have a constitutional right to marry. It was a historic ruling that I covered, and it marked a turning point for LGBTQ+ rights in the United States.
As people see more gay couples get married, they're going to realize we're no different than they are. And I think it's just as this becomes more open, more visible, people realize we're simply asking for the exact same things.
Fast forward to 2022 in a vastly different court that struck down Roe v. Wade and ended more than 50 years of abortion protections. In his concurring opinion, Justice Clarence Thomas made clear he wants to revisit other major decisions, including the 2015 case that established marriage equality. Jim Obergefell was the plaintiff in that case and the celebratory voice you heard moments ago. He is also running for a seat in Ohio's State House. Hi, Jim. I can't believe, by the way, that was 7 years ago. Wow. When we were standing there, I hope you can hear me, Jim. Can you hear me? Uh-oh, I think we're having some issues connecting. Guys? Okay, we're going to have to, unfortunately, we're going to have to try to get Jim back. You know how this goes with technical issues. We've all been through it. We'll be right back.
End of 2021, we had 7.28 million tourists that came into Dubai. Not big numbers compared to before, but very big considering the circumstances globally. Then you look at the first quarter of this year, where Expo, of course, was tail ending the second half of Expo. We had close to 4 million visitors that came in Q1. That's amazing.
You're not back at pre-COVID levels then?
Not yet,
not
but
yet.
The spirit is there. For us as Dubai, the appetite was always to go back to pre-COVID as much as we could. So it's great the fact that the private and public sector relationship is so strong that whatever we do it together. I always talk about Dubai being almost like a board, where even the private sector have a say, and they're heard, and then things are implemented. So it's not just one person decides everything else. That's the difference about Dubai.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta in New York, and this is CNN.
All right, picking up where we left off in his concurring opinion, Justice Clarence Thomas made clear he wants to revisit other major decisions, including the 2015 case that established marriage equality. Jim Obergefell was the plaintiff in that case, and he's right here with us. So, Jim, it is so hard for me to believe that that was 7 years ago today when we were out there in front of the Supreme Court right after the ruling came down legalizing same-sex marriage, and the president called you. Let's listen to that moment.
Yes, it is, Mr. President.
I figured when I saw you that we were going to be able to just so we did. I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you so much, sir. I think it was your wishes.
You know, your leadership on this, you know, is changing the country.
I really appreciate that, Mr. President. It's really been an honor for me to be involved in this fight and to have been able to, you know, fight for my marriage and live up to my commitments to my husband. So
what is it like to revisit that moment from 7 years ago and then be in the reality we are in today with Roe v. Wade being overturned, but also that concurrence from Thomas?
Well, Pamela, it's great to see you again, and I have to say it's painful to realize that was only 7 years ago, and to hear a bit of that conversation that I had with the president. You know, 7 years ago, the world was getting better, our country was getting better, and we were taking steps forward. And this decision and what it could mean, well, what it means for women and their ability to control their own bodies, make their own decisions, and what it can mean for the LGBTQ plus community and marriage, it's terrifying. I feel like our nation has taken so many steps backwards to the past, and it's because of this extreme Supreme Court and the extreme people we have in office across the country.
And as you know, there are so many conservatives in America who say, we finally, after this fight for so many decades, we finally got what we wanted. This is exactly what they have been fighting for. And I'm wondering, how worried are you that we might actually see a ruling overturning the right to gay marriage now?
I am quite concerned, Pamela. You know, that concurring opinion by Justice Thomas gives opponents of marriage equality and really LGBTQ plus equality and women's rights just the language that they can use to start teeing up cases to attack those rights. And I always believed that America was a country where this Supreme Court expanded rights and guaranteed rights and protected rights, and to have them take back a right that